Have you ever found yourself in a heated debate about what's right and wrong, only to realize you and the other person are operating from completely different moral frameworks? Perhaps you've traveled to another country and been shocked by practices that seem perfectly normal there that would be considered unthinkable where you're from. Or maybe you've noticed how your own moral convictions have shifted over time, leaving you wondering, is there such a thing as objective morality, or is it all just subjective opinion? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of philosophy's most enduring questions, one that has profound implications for how we live our lives and organize our societies. Is morality an objective truth that exists independently of us, waiting to be discovered? Or is it merely a subjective construct shaped by culture, upbringing, and individual perspective? This isn't just an academic exercise. How we answer this question shapes our approach to ethical dilemmas, influences our political views, and even affects how we judge others. By the end of this video, I'll share some perspectives on this debate that might challenge your assumptions and give you new ways to think about morality in your own life. Let's start by clarifying what we mean by objective and subjective morality. When people argue that morality is objective, they're claiming that moral facts exist independently of human opinion, similar to how mathematical truths or physical laws exist regardless of whether anyone believes them. According to this view, when we say something is wrong, we're making a claim about reality that can be true or false. On the other hand, those who champion subjective morality argue that moral judgments are more like opinions about taste. They reflect our attitudes, cultural conditioning, and personal values rather than universal truths. In this view, saying murder is wrong is ultimately an expression of our feelings about murder, not a statement about some objective moral reality. The case for objective morality often begins with our intuition that some things seem inherently wrong. Consider the torture of innocent children for amusement. Most people don't just dislike this, they feel it's wrong in a deeper, more fundamental way than simply preferring chocolate over vanilla. This universal moral revulsion suggests to some philosophers that we might be recognizing an objective moral truth. Cultural universals also lend support to the objectivist position. While cultures vary widely in their practices, anthropologists have found certain moral principles appear across virtually all human societies: prohibitions against unprovoked violence within the group, some form of reciprocity, and care for the vulnerable. These commonalities might point to a shared moral reality that transcends cultural differences. The existence of moral progress provides another argument for objective morality. When we look at historical changes like the abolition of slavery or the expansion of women's rights, we don't typically describe these as mere changes in preference. We see them as moral improvements, as society getting closer to recognizing what was right all along. This language of progress implies some objective standard against which we can measure our moral development. Hey, if you're finding this exploration thought-provoking, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. We tackle these deep philosophical questions regularly, and I'd love to have you join our community of thinkers who aren't afraid to explore life's fundamental questions. Now, let's turn to this objective view of morality. One of its strongest arguments comes from the observation of moral disagreement across cultures and throughout history. Practices considered immoral in one society, like polygamy or physician-assisted suicide, may be perfectly acceptable in another. These differences run so deep that they can't be explained away as merely factual disagreements about what leads to human flourishing. Evolutionary psychology offers another compelling case for subjectivism. Our moral intuitions can be understood as psychological adaptations that evolved to help our ancestors survive and reproduce in social groups. Feelings of fairness, loyalty, and care for kin offered survival advantages. If our moral sense is just a product of evolutionary pressures rather than a faculty for detecting objective moral truths, this undermines the idea that morality exists independently of human psychology. The naturalistic fallacy poses a significant challenge to objective morality. As philosopher David Hume famously argued, you cannot derive an ought from an is. No amount of factual knowledge about the world can tell us what we should value or how we should act. Science can tell us what happens when we stab someone, but it cannot tell us why stabbing is wrong. This logical gap between facts and values suggests that moral judgments might be fundamentally different from factual claims. Perhaps the most interesting position is one that charts a middle path between pure objectivism and pure subjectivism. Consider the analogy of health. What constitutes health is relative to human biology and varies somewhat between individuals, yet it's not purely subjective. Given the kind of beings we are, some states of the body objectively promote our flourishing while others diminish it. Similarly, morality might be objective relative to the kind of creatures we are, social beings capable of suffering and flourishing in certain ways. This view, sometimes called natural law or neo-Aristotelian ethics, suggests that while moral truths aren't floating in some Platonic realm independent of human existence, they're still discoverable facts about what promotes human well-being, given our nature. Another way to think about this is through the lens of language. Language is a human creation, yet sentences can be objectively true or false. Similarly, moral systems are human constructions, but within those systems, some actions might objectively align with or violate the principles we've established. What's particularly fascinating is how this philosophical debate plays out in our everyday lives. When we feel moral outrage at injustice, we're implicitly assuming some objective standard has been violated. Yet when we counsel tolerance for other cultures' practices, we're acknowledging the subjective influences on moral judgment. The tension between these perspectives might actually be productive. The objectivist impulse guards against moral complacency and relativism, pushing us to scrutinize our values and seek improvement. The subjectivist instinct reminds us of our fallibility and the cultural lenses through which we view morality, encouraging humility and openness to different perspectives. In closing, perhaps the most honest answer to whether morality is objective or subjective is it's complicated. Our moral sense seems to point to something beyond mere preference, yet it's undeniably shaped by our evolutionary history, cultural context, and individual experiences. Maybe morality is like a map, human-made and imperfect, yet still capable of corresponding to a real territory of human flourishing and suffering. What do you think? Is there a universal moral truth that transcends culture and time, or is morality ultimately a human construct? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found value in this exploration, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people who appreciate these deeper conversations. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more videos that explore life's big questions without easy answers. Check the description for ways to support the channel so we can keep creating content that dives beneath the surface of everyday thinking. Until next time, keep questioning, keep thinking, and remember that wrestling with these fundamental questions is part of what makes us human.